I was wiping down the third-floor hallway when my phone buzzed. Jessica's name lit up the screen. My daughter rarely called during work hours. "Dad, it's my birthday dinner tonight. 7 o'clock at the Sterling Room. Brandon made reservations." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'll be there. Just maybe clean up a bit? Brandon's colleagues will be there. You know how he is about appearances." I looked down at my gray custodian uniform, the university logo stitched above my heart. "I'll do my best." She hesitated. "And Dad? Maybe don't mention the janitor thing too much. Brandon's trying to impress his new boss." 23 years. That's how long I'd been pushing a mop cart through the halls of Preston University. At least, that's what everyone believed. The students who passed me barely looked up. The professors who nodded politely had no idea. Even Jessica thought her father was just a simple maintenance man who'd worked the same job since she was 12. The truth was a bit more complicated. I founded Preston University in 1987. Not publicly, that honor went to my late friend Charles Preston, whose name graced every building. But the money, the vision, the entire infrastructure, that came from Morrison Tech Solutions, the company I'd built from nothing in my garage in 1979. When we sold to IBM in 1986, my share came to $1.2 billion. I was 34 years old. Charles and I had been roommates at MIT. He died of pancreatic cancer 6 months before the university opened. His widow, Margaret, knew the truth. She was still on the board, still my closest confidant. Everyone else thought Charles Preston had been a visionary philanthropist. They had no idea the money came from a kid from South Boston who'd learned to code on a borrowed computer. After Charles died, I made a decision. I'd already lost my wife, Sarah, to a drunk driver when Jessica was 9. The money hadn't protected us from that. The wealth hadn't saved the only woman I'd ever loved. So I stepped back. I created trusts, anonymous funds, shell companies. I became the invisible hand that kept Preston University running. And I took a job as a custodian. Why? Because I wanted to know the place from the ground up. I wanted to hear what people said when they thought nobody important was listening. And I wanted Jessica to grow up understanding the value of work, not the corruption of easy money. She had her trust fund, of course. It released gradually $50,000 at 18, $100,000 at 25, $250,000 at 30. The rest would come at 40. I paid for her education, her starter home, her wedding, but she thought it came from her mother's life insurance and my careful savings. Brandon was another story. I met him when Jessica brought him home 6 years ago. He worked in corporate finance, drove a leased Mercedes, wore suits that cost more than my monthly salary. He called me Pops and made jokes about blue-collar work. I didn't like him, but Jessica glowed when she looked at him, and that was enough. They married a year later. I walked her down the aisle in a rented tuxedo. Brandon's family sat on the other side. His father owned a chain of car dealerships across Massachusetts. They were comfortable, upper middle class. Brandon had gone to Boston College on his parents' dime. He thought that made him special. Over the years, I noticed changes. Jessica stopped calling as often. When she did, she talked about Brandon's career, Brandon's goals, Brandon's frustrations. He felt underpaid, underappreciated. He deserved a bigger house, a better car, a position that matched his talents. I kept my mouth shut. I showed up to holidays. I played with my grandchildren, Emma and Jack. I wore my discount store clothes and drove my 15-year-old Toyota. I was just Grandpa Rick, the janitor who told corny jokes and slipped the kids $20 bills. But I watched. And I listened. The Sterling Room was the kind of restaurant where the menu didn't list prices. I arrived at 7 in khakis and a button-down shirt I'd pressed that morning. The hostess looked at me like I'd wandered in from the bus stop. "I'm here for the Harrison party." She checked her tablet. "Right this way." The private dining room was already full. Jessica stood near the bar, elegant in a black dress I recognized from Nordstrom. I'd paid the credit card bill, or rather, the trust had. Brandon worked the room in a navy suit. His laugh too loud, his gestures too expansive. Emma ran to me. "Grandpa!" I scooped up my 6-year-old granddaughter, kissed her cheek. Happy birthday to Mommy, huh? Daddy says we're celebrating big because he got promoted. Is that right? Brandon appeared at my elbow, his smile tight. Hey, Pops. Glad you could make it. His eyes scanned my outfit. Didn't have time to change from work? This has changed. I cleaned up. Right. He guided me toward a corner table where Jack, my 4-year-old grandson, was coloring. The kids can sit with you. The adults are at the main table. I felt the first flicker of something cold in my chest, but I nodded. Jessica caught my eye across the room, her expression apologetic, but not apologetic enough to say anything. Dinner proceeded. I ordered chicken fingers for the kids, salmon for myself. From my corner, I could hear Brandon's voice rising above the others, talking about his new position as senior director, his expanded team, his corner office. 3 years ahead of schedule, he was saying. Most people don't make senior director until their mid-40s. But when you've got the talent, the drive, the right education, one of his colleagues, a thin woman with severe glasses, glanced toward my table. Is that your father-in-law? Brandon followed her gaze, lowered his voice, but not enough. Yeah, Rick. He does maintenance at a college. Oh, Jessica's mom died when she was young. He did his best. But, limited opportunities, limited ambition. He picked up his wine glass. I try to include him, but it's awkward. Different worlds. The colleague nodded sympathetically. Emma tugged my sleeve. Grandpa, why aren't you sitting with us? I'm sitting with the 2 best people in the room, I said, loud enough that several heads turned. Brandon's jaw tightened. Jessica wouldn't meet my eyes. Dessert arrived. The restaurant dimmed the lights and brought out a cake. Everyone sang happy birthday. Jessica smiled and blew out the candles. Brandon stood, tapping his glass. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is a big year for us. My promotion means we can finally do some of the things we've been dreaming about. The house in Wellesley, private school for the kids, the lifestyle Jessica deserves. He pulled her close, kissed her temple. She's worked so hard, putting up with my crazy hours, supporting my career, and she did it all while basically raising the kids on her own because, well, he glanced at me. Her dad wasn't exactly equipped to give her much guidance in the success department. The room went quiet. Someone coughed. Brandon seemed to realize what he'd said. He laughed, tried to recover. No offense, Pops. Different generation, different opportunities, right? You did your best with what you had. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Emma was leaning against my shoulder, half asleep. Jack was drawing a dinosaur. I looked at Brandon, at Jessica, at the room full of people who saw an old janitor in cheap clothes. None taken, I said. Jessica looked like she might cry, or throw up. I couldn't tell which. I didn't stay for after-dinner drinks. I kissed my grandchildren goodbye, hugged my daughter. She held on a little too long, whispered I'm sorry against my shoulder, and walked out into the September night. In my car, I sat in the parking lot for a long time. I thought about Sarah, about what she would say if she'd heard Brandon's speech. She'd been a teacher. She understood that respect wasn't about job titles or income brackets. She'd married me when I was a kid with a dream and a closet full of rejected code. I pulled out my phone. Not the old flip phone I carried in my uniform. My other phone. The one connected to email addresses and bank accounts that controlled more money than Brandon would earn in 10 lifetimes. I opened my contacts. Found Margaret Preston's number. Richard, she answered. It's late. Everything all right? I need to call a board meeting, I said. As soon as possible. There was a pause. What's happened? It's time, I said. I've played this long enough. I didn't hear from Jessica for 3 days. Then she called, her voice tight. Dad, did you co-sign Brandon's car loan? I was in my office, not the custodian's closet, my actual office behind a locked door on the 4th floor that everyone assumed was storage. I had monitors displaying every financial account connected to my family. I did, I said, 2 years ago. Why? The bank called. They said there's a problem with the co-signer's credit. They're reviewing the loan. Brandon's freaking out because if they call it, we'll have to pay off the whole balance or they'll take the car. That's concerning. Dad, can you call them? Explain that it's a mistake? I'll look into it, I said. I did not look into it, because there was no mistake. I'd called the bank myself, not as Rick Morrison, janitor, as Richard E. Morrison, board member of Citizens Financial Group. I'd had a very productive conversation with their VP of lending about reviewing certain accounts with questionable cosigner credentials. Brandon's Mercedes would be gone within the week. That was just the beginning. Jessica called again on Friday. Dad, something weird is happening with the house. What kind of weird? The mortgage company sent a letter saying they're transferring our loan to a new servicer. And the new servicer is demanding a full appraisal and proof of income because, I don't know, something about ownership changes? Brandon doesn't understand it. His dad usually handles this stuff, but he says he's never seen anything like it. That does sound strange, I said. It wasn't strange at all. I owned the mortgage company. Or rather, Morrison Holdings LLC owned 73% of Bay State Lending Group, which held Brandon and Jessica's mortgage. A few strategic restructuring decisions. A new servicing contract. Some very specific language about high-risk loans. The house would be fine, for now. But Brandon's confidence was starting to crack. Monday morning, I was mopping the second-floor hallway when I heard shouting. Brandon came storming out of the administration building, phone pressed to his ear. What do you mean, suspended? I've been banking there for 15 years. He nearly walked into me, didn't apologize, didn't even see me. Just kept walking, kept shouting. I pushed my cart toward the windows and pulled out my phone. Checked the account. Yes. Bank of America had flagged his accounts for suspicious activity. Nothing illegal, just multiple large transfers that triggered their fraud algorithms. Algorithms that I'd helped develop in a consulting capacity back in 2003. His accounts would be frozen for 72 hours while they investigated, just long enough to miss his credit card payments, just long enough to start a cascade of late fees and credit score drops. Jessica called that night, crying, Dad, I don't know what's happening. Everything's falling apart. Brandon's accounts are frozen. The car loan is being called. His credit card was declined at the grocery store. And his boss called him in today about, I don't even know what, some kind of audit? An audit of his expense reports. From the last 3 years, they're saying there are irregularities. Brandon says it's fine, that he can explain everything. But Dad, her voice dropped to a whisper, what if he can't? What if he loses his job? I'm sure it'll work out, I said. It would not work out, because Brandon's company, Thornton Financial Group, had just hired a new compliance director, a woman I'd personally recommended to their CEO during a golf game last month. She was thorough, relentless, and she'd already found $47,000 in questionable expenses over 3 years. Client dinners that never happened, conference trips with no attendance records, mileage reimbursements that didn't match actual travel. Nothing criminal, just enough to violate company policy, just enough to justify termination for cause. Brandon was fired on Wednesday. Jessica showed up at my apartment that night, my small, one-bedroom apartment near the university that I'd lived in for 23 years. She looked exhausted, 10 years older than she had at her birthday dinner. Dad, can we borrow money? I was making tea, chamomile, Sarah's favorite. How much? A lot. Brandon's unemployment won't even cover the mortgage. The car's getting repossessed tomorrow, and his parents can't help. His dad's dealerships are having problems. It's like everything's collapsing at once. That's terrible, I said. How much do you need? 50,000. Just to catch up, just to get stable. I know it's a lot, but the trust fund doesn't release more until I'm 40, and that's 5 years away. And Dad, I'm scared. Brandon's been so angry. He says it's not fair, that he worked so hard, and someone must be sabotaging him, and she started crying. He said, it's karma, that we shouldn't have treated you like that at the restaurant, that the universe is punishing us. I poured tea into 2 mugs, sat across from her at my small kitchen table, the same table where she'd done homework as a little girl. 50,000 is a lot, I said slowly. I have some savings, but I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't ask. It's just, Emma's birthday is next week, and Brandon yelled at her yesterday for asking about her party, and Dad, I don't know what to do. I reached across the table, took her hand. Let me think about it. I'll see what I can do. She left an hour later. I watched from my window as she got into her car, a Honda Civic she'd bought used 8 years ago, before Brandon convinced her she needed to project success. I made another phone call. Margaret, is everything set for Friday? The board is assembled. Press releases are drafted. Richard, are you sure about this? Once it's public, I'm sure. Your daughter doesn't know? No. She's going to be hurt, angry. I know. Why now? Why this way? I was quiet for a long time. Outside, students walked across the quad, laughing, their whole lives ahead of them. 23 years ago, I'd watched Jessica walk these same paths, young and hopeful. Because she needs to see it, I said finally. She needs to see what happened when she chose his version of success over everything I taught her. When she let him treat me like I was less than. When she stood there silent while he humiliated me in front of a room full of people. She needs to understand that respect isn't about job titles, that dignity isn't measured in salary, that the man she was embarrassed of had more power in his little finger than Brandon will ever have. That's harsh, Richard. No, I said. That's a lesson. One she should have learned a long time ago. Friday morning, Preston University held an emergency assembly. Every student, every faculty member, every staff person was required to attend. The announcement said it was about a major donation that would secure the university's future. I took my place in the back of the auditorium, pushing my mop cart. No one questioned it. The janitor was part of the furniture. Margaret took the stage. She looked elegant as always, 72 years old with silver hair and a navy suit. Thank you all for coming. Today is a momentous day in Preston University's history. For 38 years, this institution has operated on a foundation built by my late husband, Charles Preston. His name is on our buildings, our scholarships, our mission statement. But today, I need to tell you the truth. A murmur went through the crowd. Charles Preston was a visionary. But the money, the resources, the means to create this university, that came from someone else. Someone who has asked to remain anonymous for nearly 4 decades. Someone who has worked among you, listened to you, supported you from the shadows. Today, he's agreed to step forward. My phone buzzed. Jessica's number. I ignored it. Margaret continued. This man is a pioneer in computer technology. A self-made billionaire who has given away more than $800 million to educational causes. He founded Morrison Tech Solutions in 1979 and revolutionized data processing systems. When he sold his company in 1986, he used that money to create Preston University as a monument to his best friend. And then he took a job as a custodian so he could serve this community in the most honest way possible. The crowd was buzzing now. People were looking around, confused. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the true founder of Preston University, Richard Morrison. She pointed to the back of the auditorium. To me, every head turned. I left my mop cart against the wall, walked down the center aisle. Students I'd said good morning to for 23 years stared at me with open mouths. Professor Chen, who always thanked me for cleaning his office, looked like he'd seen a ghost. I climbed the stairs to the stage, took the microphone from Margaret. Hello, I said. Most of you know me as Rick, the custodian, the guy who unclogs your toilets and sweeps your floors. That person is real. I've done this job for 23 years. I've enjoyed it. But Margaret's right. I'm also the person who built this university, and today I'm making it official. I pulled papers from my jacket pocket. I'm donating an additional $300 million to Preston University. This money will create full-ride scholarships for first-generation college students. Kids whose parents worked with their hands. Kids who grew up understanding the value of hard work. Kids who know that dignity comes from what you do, not what you earn. The auditorium erupted in applause. I saw tears on faces, saw students hugging each other, saw the faculty rising to their feet. And in the back, near the doors, I saw Jessica. She must have seen the news alert. She was standing frozen, her face white. Brandon was next to her. He looked like he'd been hit by a truck. After the assembly, after the press interviews and the photographs, I found Jessica sitting on a bench outside the administration building, the same bench where she used to wait for me to finish my shift when she was in high school. I sat beside her. She wouldn't look at me. "Say something," I said finally. "You let me think." Her voice broke. "All these years, you let me think you were just a janitor. You let Brandon treat you like you were nobody. I was a janitor. I am a janitor. That's real work. Honest work. You humiliated us." She turned to me, tears streaming. "We lost everything. Brandon lost his job, his car. We almost lost the house." "You didn't lose the house," I said quietly. "The loan was restructured. The terms are actually better now. And Brandon's suspicious activity investigation? It was resolved this morning. His accounts are unfrozen, though he'll need to find a new bank. Bank of America has invited him to take his business elsewhere." She stared at me. "What?" "I never touched your money, Jessica. Not a penny. Everything you actually owned stayed yours. I just removed all the things Brandon had that he didn't deserve. The inflated car lease, the expense account he was abusing, the false sense of superiority." I paused. "And I wanted you to feel what it's like when everything falls apart. When the person you thought you could rely on suddenly seems powerless. Because that's how you made me feel. When you stood there silent while your husband called me limited, while he said I wasn't equipped to give guidance on success. I was going to say something, but you didn't. You apologized after, in private, where it didn't cost you anything. But in that moment, when it mattered, you chose him." Jessica wiped her eyes. "What happens now? Now, you decide. Brandon's got job offers. 3 companies reached out this morning. Funny how that works when word gets out about his father-in-law." I handed her an envelope. "This is information about your trust fund, the full trust fund. It's bigger than you thought. A lot bigger. It's yours at 40, like we agreed. But you can access it earlier if you demonstrate financial responsibility. And this is important if you understand what wealth means." "What does it mean?" "It means responsibility. It means using your advantages to lift others up, not to look down on them. It means teaching Emma and Jack that every person has value, regardless of their job title. It means never, ever letting someone treat another human being the way Brandon treated me." She was quiet for a long time. Students walked past us, some recognizing me, whispering, pointing. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "Really, truly sorry. Not because you turned out to be rich, because I hurt you. I know. Can you forgive me?" I looked at my daughter, saw Sarah in her eyes, saw the little girl who used to draw pictures for me in the margins of her homework, saw the young woman who'd worked 2 jobs to pay her way through college, even though she had a trust fund, because I'd taught her the value of earning things herself. "I already have," I said, "but you need to forgive yourself, and you need to decide who you want to be. The person who values appearance over substance, or the person I raised." Emma came running across the quad, Jack trailing behind her. Brandon followed at a distance, looking lost. "Grandpa!" Emma threw her arms around me. "Mommy said you're famous." "Not famous, just visible. Can you still come to my birthday party?" I pulled her onto my lap. I wouldn't miss it. Jack climbed up too. "Will you still tell us dinosaur jokes?" "Always." Brandon approached slowly, stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A real one, not the polite crap from before." I waited. "I was an ass. I judged you. I treated you like you were less than me because of your job, and that was wrong. I let my own insecurity make me cruel." He took a breath. "And I was wrong about a lot of other things too. The way I handled money. The way I treated people at work. The way I've been treating Jessica. Expecting her to make me feel successful instead of building something real together. That's honest," I said. "I got 3 job offers today. All because of who you are. I don't deserve them." "No, you don't. Not yet. But you could." He met my eyes. "How?" "Start with one of those job offers. The smallest one. The one that pays least but gives you the most room to prove yourself. Work twice as hard as everyone else. Be the first one in, last one out. And when you get home, you tell your wife and children that they're more important than any promotion. You teach Emma and Jack that people are valuable for who they are, not what they have. You learn humility the hard way, because that's the only way it sticks. Brandon nodded slowly. And if I do all that, then maybe in 5 years, 10 years, when you've become the person you should have been all along, we can talk about being family, really being family. Jessica was crying again, but different this time, softer. She reached for Brandon's hand. I stood up, lifting Jack with me. Emma stayed attached to my leg. I need to get back to work, I said. But you're not really a janitor anymore, Jessica said. Everyone knows now. I'm exactly who I've always been. The job doesn't change. Tomorrow morning, I'll be in the 3rd floor hallway with my cart, because someone needs to clean this place, and I happen to be good at it. And because every single day, students walk past me, and some of them, the good ones, say good morning. They see me, the real me. Not the billionaire, not the founder, just Rick, who mops the floors and asks about their exams. That's who you want to be? Brandon asked. That's who I am, I said. Everything else is just details. I walked back toward the administration building. Behind me, I heard Emma ask if we could have chocolate cake at her party. Heard Jack say he'd drawn me a new dinosaur picture. Heard Jessica tell Brandon they needed to talk. Really talk. Margaret was waiting inside. Documents spread across her desk. Feel better? She asked. I feel like I did what Sarah would have wanted. Taught the lesson without destroying the relationship. Charles would have approved too. He always said you had a gift for the long game. I looked out the window at the campus, at buildings that bore Charles Preston's name but existed because of my code, my algorithms, my late nights in a garage 30 years ago. 23 years is a long game, I said. Worth it? I thought about Emma's hug, about Jack's dinosaur pictures, about Jessica's apology, about Brandon's face when he realized what he'd become. Yeah, I said. Worth every minute. That night, I went back to my apartment, made tea, sat at my small table. Tomorrow, I'd put on my gray uniform. I'd push my cart through the halls. I'd nod to students and professors, and every single one of them would know exactly who I was. But some of them, the ones who mattered, would also know what I'd been teaching all along, that the measure of a person isn't in their bank account or their job title. It's in how they treat the janitor, how they see the person everyone else walks past. My phone buzzed. Jessica's number. Dad? I was thinking. Emma's birthday party. Maybe we could have it at your apartment instead of the restaurant. Order pizza. Play games. Just family. I'd like that. And Dad, thank you for not giving up on me. Never, I said. Not in this lifetime. After we hung up, I stood at my window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Sarah was smiling. I could feel it, because I'd done what we'd always said we'd do. We'd raised a daughter who could learn, who could grow, who could understand that true wealth has nothing to do with money. Everything else was just noise.